I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the way I see an Enneagram style working, and what it does and why it does what it does. And in some ways this will apply to most all Enneagram styles. It will apply to all Enneagram styles. The Enneagram introduces us to, I think, the study of and the realm of what's called secondary gains. This is a term that comes out of NLP, and what it essentially means is when you go into a new situation, when you go into a situation where you're trying to solve a problem, or let's say you go to a therapist and you have a conflict, some difficulty that you've been working on, or you find some limit within yourself, usually you're misunderstanding your own motives in some way. Usually if you have a certain something that you're struggling with, there's a way in which you're probably not quite getting you might be getting the surface results, let's say if you compulsively eat or something like that. You recognize that you're driven to compulsively eat, and you recognize the behavior while you're engaged in it, and you recognize the effects of it afterwards. But at the same time, there's this kind of quality of being a witness to your own behavior simultaneously, and maybe you struggle with it, maybe you label this behavior, and maybe you have insight into it, but it's almost like the person within you who is engaged in the behavior is not who you're in contact with. That person within you, that part of you, so to speak, which is engaging in the behavior, is a part of you that you don't know quite so well at those times. You don't know its motives in a way. And maybe you have some insight and understanding into it, but you can't quite negotiate with it in a way that will allow you to substitute something else for compulsive eating or find other choices in a way. And the experience is of not having choices at the time. Now, in many ways, there's a part of us that runs our Enneagram style in exactly the same way. And they use the same term. They describe it in terms of it being a compulsion, being a sort of out-of-control behavior. One of the problems, I think, with the Enneagram is that it is a diagnostic model, and it's only a diagnostic model. And people mistake it for a method. It's often taught that way, too, sincerely but confusedly. It's often taught to be a vehicle, but actually it's not a vehicle, it's a map. And it's only a map, but it's a great map. It's a terrific map, and it does everything a map could ever do for you. But at the same time, it won't really take you anywhere. It'll codify things that have been happening, and it'll clarify things, and it'll point to things, and it will maybe even motivate you and get you going, or free you up in a certain sort of way from taking your behavior personally. And it builds what they call in psychology an observing ego. You sort of develop more of a witness within yourself that's able to stand back and take your own behavior less personally, and stand back and just say, my God, look, there it goes again. I'm doing this thing again. I'm engaged in this behavior, and I'm not really choosing it. Now, since it's a diagnostic model, by and large, and not necessarily a method, we profit quite a bit by adding things like NLP to it, it seems to me, and finding ways to apply the model, because you can learn and learn and learn and learn about the Enneagram, and it's a deep and complex subject on the one hand. On the other hand, diagnostic models are notoriously two-edged tools, because people get stuck in them. It's like medical student syndrome, where medical students learn about a new ailment and they imagine they have it each time. There are, for instance, models like adult children of alcoholic material, material about family systems and family dynamics that are in the popular realm. And those materials are notable for being really incisive diagnostically, and they're also notable for how people get stuck in them. They get stuck in things like inner child work, for instance. They become inner children in a way and can't get out of it, you know. Or for a long time, people were saying things to me like, well, I'm in recovery. And then you would ask them how long recovery lasted, because the recovery usually implies a sort of time limit. And they would say, I'm in recovery for the rest of my life. I'm in recovery for the rest of my life from a bad childhood. This is usually a symptom of someone having absorbed a model that they then have gotten stuck in the premises of. And it's very possible with the Enneagram to do that as well. It's very possible to get into a sort of a limited mindset with it, wherein it becomes an excuse. It becomes a kind of explanation for why you do what you do, but not really something to occupy the time and to fill your mind up with and to have a certain kind of insight into, but not really something that then in the end helps you move from one place to another. Not really a vehicle, more like a map. Now, no one would confuse staying home and reading maps with going on a journey, you know. But it's possible with something like the Enneagram to get so involved in the content of it that you don't realize that it is describing a central strategy that you're actively engaged in on a daily basis, sort of moment by moment, and that strategy is related to a part of you. And that part of you is almost making the world up as you go along. If we had no central organizing principle, no kind of inner strategy for making sense of reality, we'd be likely really overwhelmed. You know, we'd be like drowning in an ocean of sensation and vision, and just be kind of flooded with a panorama of the vastness of reality. So in some ways, we need biologically a strategy for chunking things down, for making the world manageable. And some of the almost biological functions of this, the unconscious administrative functions of something like an Enneagram style, are that it renders reality down from its potential vastness into a narrow sort of flume through which we proceed. And within that, we know how to proceed. Within that, we know how to take power in certain circumstances. We know how to manage reality. And I think one of the most important functions of something like an Enneagram style is predictive, to know what to do next.